Hi there everybody, I've just been like a massive fan of the Trails series ever since I first picked up Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky back in 2010. I've beaten all the games in the series, and even though I did hear some like rumblings about bad reviews about this game over in Japan, I didn't read any of them, and I didn't look at any gameplay. I wanted to go into this game with an open mind and let you know exactly how I do feel about it. And I do think that that's worth a sub, as I do try my hardest to hit 100,000 subscribers. With your help, your like, and your sub, I just know I can get there, so thank you so much for that. And now, let me just go ahead and tell you all about my experience with Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2. Now, there's just kind of like a couple of questions that I just kind of want to get out of the way. First things first. No, this is not a good starting point for the series, as this is a direct sequel to the first Daybreak game. So, if you do want to see what this arc is all about, I would highly suggest that you start there, because that game is a good starting point for the series. However, if you're like me, and you have like the memory of a fruit fly, there is a recap of the events that occurred in the first game that you can watch to refresh your memory. And while the vast majority of the cutscenes are voiced, it is not fully voiced. However, you can choose between either English or Japanese audio. And finally, it is available for purchase on the PS4, PS5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now, with all that out of the way, let's really kind of like deep dive into this game. Rather than beginning with the story like I typically do, I instead want to talk about the combat first. Mostly because it's pretty much identical to the first game, with that mixture between action and turn-based. However, while in the first game you can like pretty much just kind of like hug the walls and avoid everything if you wanted to, here the enemies actually have a brain in their heads, and they'll chase you down and they'll even shoot you with ranged attacks and magic outside of combat, making avoiding all these encounters so much harder to do. However, to counter this and help you out, they've introduced the ability to dodge, as well as use a powerful rush attack with the R2 button to stun the monsters, and you can even cast arts outside of battle to damage those more physically resistant mobs. If you do engage the shards and decide to fight in the turn-based combat mode, it's pretty much par of the course for the recent games in the series. However, I will say this. In the first game, it was really frickin' hard to figure out whose turn it was next because, that turn gauge order, the thing that really should be the easiest thing to make, didn't make any sense. But here, they fixed it. Thank God they did. I just don't know why developers constantly want to change things that work perfectly fine and then turn them into some sort of overly designed nonsense just for the sake of the change. It boggles my mind. Some more new things that were added to the sequel are the hacking of treasure chests. About once a chapter or so you'll encounter a locked chest, and you have to go through a little mini game with Mare to unlock it, and I am notoriously bad at these things. But at least it does let you retry this hacking game as many times as you need to. Also, quests are no longer just kind of like an exercise of going from green exclamation point to the next green exclamation point and then answering the questions correctly. Now some quests have an extra minigame attached to them where you pretty much have to play hide and seek with your quest target. And just like hacking the treasure chests, I'm terrible at this. But it does let you retry as many times as you want to, and I need all the retries that I can get. Then, they've also added a new achievement system which is actually kind of neat, and it gives you rewards for really going out of your way and doing everything that there is to do. Now, for all the cool new things that they added to make it more immersive, they got fishing so wrong. So god-awfully wrong. At this point, I've just given up on it entirely, and I've resigned myself to never catching anything. I just cannot do it. It is literally impossible. I have still, to this day, not caught one single frickin' fish. First, you have to use the Mare search to find out where the fish are. Then you pull out your rod, and you align it with that fish. Then you hit the X button a millisecond after that stupid fish gets hooked. Then you have to stop this meter moving around at the speed of light on these teeny tiny points of a ring that continually switch around, and you're timed while you do this, and you only get 3 chances, and if you get it wrong, then you lose the fish. It's one of those horrible judgment rings from the Shadow Heart series, but it's controlled by a sadist, and you're inflicted with a billion status effects. It's just terrible. I would so much rather just be mashing the X button and getting more arthritis on my thumb than ever dealing with this crap again. Okay, now, let's talk about the story. because here is where I want to spend the vast majority of my time in the review. For the most part, I have loved all the games in the Trails series, and while some of them have definitely tried new things, I haven't really been disappointed by them, because they've always seemed to move the plot along and introduce you to new characters and new places. But not this time. Let's look at the sequels in the series. In Trails in the Sky's second chapter, you got to go back to Liberl, revisit old friends, rescue Joshua, and defeat the Auroral. In Trails Through Azure, you got closure on the whole Crossbow saga, you doubled up your roster, you got to learn so much more about the world, not just Crossbell, but Liberl, Erebonia, and even Calvard. It was a gem, and is probably still the best in the series. Then, in Trails of Cold Steel 2, you took charge of the Courageous. You got to fly around all around Erebonia, collect up all of your scattered party members. It was kind of like an open world Final Fantasy X-2 sort of thing, and I loved it. But here, not so much. There's only 3 chapters in the game, plus a prologue and an intermission. However, in the game's defense, these chapters are divided up into separate routes. So while Van and his team might be off investigating one part of Calvard, Agnes and her team are clear across on the other side of the country doing their own investigation. And these things are happening simultaneously. So even though you might have a whole bunch of characters, you can't use them all because they're split up on these separate routes. That's not to say that you can't use a big party though, because you can, but you can only do so in this virtual combat simulator called the Garden. And you're going to be spending quite a lot of time in this garden. It's like half the frickin' game. It's the main way that your characters will be leveling up, getting more Sepith, powering up their crafts and abilities, and finding rare items. But even though you might be spending literally hours and hours climbing up the floor of these gardens, you're not actually advancing the storyline, because at the end of the day, it's just busy work. It's virtual reality. It's not storyline, because it's designed to, waste your time. I mean, it seems like a really cool idea, but I feel like something like this should have been maybe saved for the post-game content, or just made entirely optional. But because of the way the game is set up, if you don't level up your characters in the garden, you're going to be severely underleveled whenever it comes time to the main storyline missions. Especially because experience points are not shared between your benched characters. They don't level up with your main controlled characters. Oh, and did I also mention that the garden is just a randomly generated dungeon? We all know how much I love those. And once you start in there, you're pretty much stuck there for hours. And all you want to do is be get me out of here. It's such a slog, and it really breaks the pacing of the game. And you know what? We all know that the Trails series isn't exactly known for its breakneck pacing. Even on a good day, the Trails series is slow, but this thing brings it to a crawl. So, I guess that brings up the $64,000 question, which really is this: should you buy it? Well, the answer to that really just depends on how much of a Trails fan that you are. If you're like me, and you're fully invested in this series, and you've played them all, then yeah, you should definitely buy this. Don't just let it be that one hole in your collection. If you played the first game, and you want to see how the storyline ends, then yeah, you should buy it. But if you're just a casual RPG fan, coming in looking for an interesting story and some fun battles, then I just personally think that there are just better RPGs out there for that. The bottom line is this: I hold the Trails games up to a high standard. They set that bar themselves back in the day in 2010 with Trails in the Sky, and this one here just does not meet that standard. I could forgive it if it was a spin-off like Nayuta, or a fanservice game like Reverie, but it's not. This is a mainline game. And also, I just gotta say, both Reverie and Nayuta had more pertinent storyline and world building than this one too. I swear, half the conversations are about how cute their outfits are, or how delicious the food is. It's just a slap in the face to waste your time like that, because I don't care how good your fake food tastes. This could very well be my first negative review of a Trails game that I've ever made, and it really pains me to say that because I do genuinely love this series. It's still in my top 10 favorite RPG series of all time, but that does not mean that they're infallible. That does not mean that this series gets a free pass, and that they're above being called out for poor game design and bad pacing and questionable choices. In fact, I think that as fans, we owe that to them. We owe them honest feedback on the games that they develop and produce so that we can continue getting quality games. Because if we're not honest about how we feel, then we're just going to be getting more of this slop. and that's not good for anybody. So that's it for my review of The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2 for the PS4, PS5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. I do hope you all enjoyed this and understood my viewpoint, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and also check out these other videos, because I really do think that you're going to enjoy them. And as always, have a good day.